Good afternoon. Welcome this third and last conversation session, online session organized by the member side of ESMA, Elizabeth Casaman Foundation. And in this occasion, we are going to debate on memory sites and heritage. We understand in a globalized world like the cultural diversity and the protection of natural heritage and man-made heritage, memory and cultural issues are considered urgent, and the development of communication since the second communication of the second half of the 20th century is to foster and the concept of international culture to foster these values. The consensus are unquestionable. It- However, there are some tensions. There are still some arising. This need to be preserved as part of humanity, and this raises questions regarding the circumstance in which sites associated with a memory of recent regional or local conflicts can be seen as common to all of humanity and be relevant to the global community. Then fundamental questions related to the purpose and scope of recent memory narratives and whether their values can be defined as universal are also significant. We seek to discuss various routes of experience that led or are on the way to different results, such as Auschwitz-Birkenau, incorporated into UNESCO World Heritage List in 1979, the Ile de Gorée Center of the Slave Trade on the African Coast, declared World Heritage in 1978, or the ESMA Memory Site Museum, which is currently in the process of presenting its candidacy. It's submitting this candidacy. I'm going who are who are the organizations that are dealing with this and handling this. The institution I belong to, the museum site ex Center of Torture and Extermination, is a historical national museum, and it's a court evidence for cases in less humanity. It was in 2015 was inaugurated as a museum, as a site of memory, with a museographic intervention that is permanent. And today it's to claims and to convey memory. As I said before, part is it's in the process of being. Elizabeth Kesselman is a foundation is participating in the organization of these seminars and is committed in this past and the consequence of collective social collectives in Latin America, Spain, and Germany. The it supports the intercultural dialogue between Germany, Latin America, and Spain, and the scientific and political and also cultural aspects. And the Global Diplomacy Lab, that is a platform for the exploration of new ways and new diplomacies that are more inclusive, that go beyond the traditional politics. Therefore, there is a series of professionals, very creative professionals from different fields that participate to use different communication tools based on mutual respect and confidence and reformulating the action of collective actions. I would like to present our moderator in the last, Vivian Valencia. She's professor and researcher at the Wageningen University. She's an expert in food systems and member of the Global Diplomacy Lab and she participated in the Lab of Mass Atrocities in the ESMA Memory Site Museum that took place in 2015, some years ago. Thank you for participating in. And a last reminder, this is transmitted with simultaneous translation to Spanish and English. So everyone who's connected, they can choose in the menu, in the lower tab of your screen, in the icon of the world, they can choose interpretation. They can choose the channel they prefer. Vivian, I I open the floor for you. Thank you, Salome. All of you, it's a pleasure for me to be here with you, moderating this webinar on memory sites and heritage. We have here four experts that will help us to go deep in this topic. We have Thomas Michaldo, we have Mauricio Salama, Eloy Colli, and Mikey Grosita will give more details of their experience as they talk and contribute in this session. We are going to start with Thomas Michaldo. He's licensed in history, specialized in modern Jewish history in the Jagiellonian University of Krakow, and with he's associated with the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memoria and Museum. In 2013, in the methodology of guided visits, is responsible of the cooperation with guides, the training and recruitment of guide candidates, as well as the development of qualification of the guides who cooperate with the museum. Thank you, Thomas, for being here with us, and I give you the floor.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation, and it's really my big pleasure and honor to be here and to be able to share with you a few thoughts on Auschwitz Museum, on Auschwitz Memorial, and on the memory, and how we try to convey and what we really try to convey to people who come to visit our memorial. And I'm really hoping for a very fruitful discussion after our presentations. But before I really start, I would like to tell everybody a little bit more about how Auschwitz really became a memorial site, because I think it's crucial in order to understand what is our heritage and where we really started. In fact, soon after the camp was liberated, so soon after January 1945, the first survivors of the camp started coming back to the premises of the former camp. Some of them because they tried somehow to cope with the traumas they got when they stayed in a camp, and they believed this would be a good way of healing themselves, just to come to be again in this place. But some of them already at that moment, already in 1945, believed that it is very important to preserve the site somehow. But we must remember that at that time, Auschwitz was in fact in the hands of the Soviet army, who created a camp for German POWs in part of the camp. But the survivors who came back were allowed to stay at the former camp, and they started collecting the leftovers of documents or other artifacts that SS soldiers didn't manage to destroy. There was a huge attempt of destroying all the evidence in the end of 1944. SS men managed to destroy the majority of the documents. However, what was left later collected by the survivors who came back to the museum. And such a little bit chaotic situation lasted for about a year and a half. And then in mid-1947, our museum was established. On one hand, it was triggered, of course, by those survivors who came back. But on the other hand, there were also some survivors of Auschwitz who were involved in a communist government in Poland after the war. And it was their joint initiative to create the site and to create the Auschwitz Memorial. And although today, I think, if we think about Auschwitz, then we immediately associate Auschwitz and Birkenau, so two main sites. I just like to stress that in the beginning in 1940, 45, 46, it was not that clear and obvious that both sides will be protected. There were supporters of the idea that Birkenau, because of the atrocities that were committed there, should be completely destroyed, should be left as a deserted land. And there was a big fight among the supporters of that options and the supporters of the option of preserving of both Auschwitz and Birkenau. And luckily, the second option, of course, took over, and today people can visit and see remnants of both Auschwitz and Birkenau. And we believe that, in fact, it is impossible to understand what happened in Auschwitz without seeing and understanding Birkenau, and just the opposite. It is impossible to understand Birkenau without Auschwitz. So we just need to remember that these are two different camps, but linked close one next to another. As it was already said here, already in 1979, Auschwitz became part of the UNESCO list of the World Heritage, so more or less 30 years after it was established as a memorial. And this is the only example of such places on this list. I mean, of the former Nazi death and concentration camps. So this is the example really pars pro toto of this camps. And I think over the years, Auschwitz Memorial became, in a way, the voice of all these memorials of the former Nazi regime. And but on the other hand, it's very difficult to define precisely our position. I mean, the position of Auschwitz Museum within the community of such this sites. We of course have some contacts with the UNESCO who come to visit Auschwitz Memorial, who come to assess also what we are doing and if we are sticking to the regulations of the UNESCO, but we don't really have much contacts with other sites within the community. But coming back to the memory and what we really try to do and what we are trying to convey in the museum, I think there are two main purposes of Auschwitz Museum today. One is just to preserve the physical remnants of the former camps, because we know very well that the authenticity of the place plays a very important role for people who are coming to our memorial. And the other thing is to, of course, to educate about the atrocities committed in Auschwitz, mainly about the Holocaust, of course, because Auschwitz also at some point became the central, the focal point of the collective memory about the Holocaust. But we also try not to forget about other victims of the place, meaning Poles, meaning Soviet prisoners of war, meaning Sinti and Roma people, and many others. And the message we are trying to convey, we are trying to our visitors to understand is that Auschwitz was not the beginning of the genocide. It was just the opposite. It was its final stage. It was because it all started much earlier. This elaborate, this sophisticated genocide started not in the gas chambers, but it started on the streets. It started with the words, it started with the hatred, it started also, which is very important and which is always stressed by the survivors, with indifference, with indifference of the society. People who saw that atrocities are being committed on Jews, on other people, and preferred not to look on this, turn their backs, or they just prefer to stay silent. And therefore, we think it is very important to educate people and to make them aware that this kind of radicalization may lead in some extreme situations to another genocides. But we have, I think, also one more message, and maybe not even the message, but more the challenge for the future. And I think all the memorial sites will at some point face the same challenge. And the challenge is that we're really facing the time where there will be no survivors with us. The youngest survivors today are in their mid 80s, and they were in fact children when they went through the camp. So this is really a big challenge for us, how to educate about Auschwitz and the Holocaust without the survivors. And we must make our visitors also aware that at some point they should at least try also today to listen to the survivors who are still alive, because at some point it will be our task to convey their message to younger generations. Thank you, and we'll talk more about.
Muchas gracias, Thomas. Ya veo muchas preguntas, o al menos una pregunta.
Thank you, Thomas. I see many questions here, at least one in the chat. I want to remind everybody that as you get questions, you can write them on the chat. And then at the end, we will get into this discussion. Thank you, Thomas. Now we will hear Mikey Gorosito. She's Executive Director of the ESMA Memory Site Museum, former clandestine center for detention, torture, and extermination. She has a degree in educational sciences and is an expert in international cooperation in Latin American regional integration. She was appointed coordinator of international cooperation and also an analyst of the UNESCO World Heritage List, and she's executive direction of the museum. Thank you, Mikey. I give you the floor. Thank you, Vivian. Thank you, Thomas, Eloy, Dorothy. Good morning to everybody here. And of course, I want to thank you from the ESMA Memory Site Museum to give us the space for debate, and thank the people and institutions that are part of this conversation. Before starting in the context, to answer the trigger questions that Vivian gave us to develop this presentation, I would like to talk briefly about our institution. You will probably know that the ESMA Memory Site Museum is a former clandestine center for detention, torture, and extermination, is located in what was the officers' mess in the school of the Navy. And it was a very prestigious school in Buenos Aires dedicated to the education of Navy officers. And in Argentina, in 1976, when we started with the military government, there was established here at ESMA a Center for Detention, Torture, and Extermination, and there were around 5,000 disappeared people that went through this, and most of them were assassinated. These victims were political activists from revolutionary organizations, social organizations, students, union members, religious members of religious organizations. The whole illegal action and the forced disappearance of people is a crime and is depriving people of their freedom. When we recovered our democracy in 1983, ESMA turned into a symbol of those crimes committed by the military dictatorship. And through a very long process headed by human rights organizations, Argentine justice, derogated laws of impunity, and today There are many trials still going on regarding these issues. And in parallel, the whole premise of the ESMA was recovered by the Buenos Aires city government and was transformed through an agreement with the national government into a space for memory and for the defense of human rights. So those crimes against humanity, um, today we have in this place human rights organizations and organizations defending human rights. As of 2012, ex-President Christina Kirchner decided to start the construction of the museum. And as Salome was telling you at the beginning of the talk today, a few days ago, we had our 7th anniversary of being a memory site. And as an institution, we are also a historical monument, historical heritage of Argentina. And also to quote Thomas, it's important to point out that to reach this site, this status, we had to develop long, deep, and complex debates about transforming this former clandestine center into a memory site. But today, this site has a wide consensus and has wide support that we have received regarding our candidacy to the UNESCO World Heritage List. And it's a project that is defining us at this point in the life of the institution. The museum today is working on a plan to develop the candidacy, and it's a candidacy of the Argentinian state. And today, we are a site that has not yet entered the World Heritage List, but we are working on doing that. It's a candidacy presented by the Argentine state, and we are presenting this to the UNESCO World Heritage as a witness of the darkest night of our country, where we had more than 700 clandestine centers of our detention in Argentina. Getting back to the candidacy, it is oriented to contributing to the visibility, international visibility of the two international values that are or state terrorism based in the forced disappearance of people and the value of social consensus to achieve justice. We also consider regarding the candidacy that it is an opportunity not only to point out these values and not only in their context of their relevance in the Argentinian history and international history, but as a contribution to world heritage, because we think that is a historical memory from Argentina, but also Latin American and worldwide. And we have the obligation of sharing it, teaching it, and making it visible. And also remembering that the regional context of the facts symbolized by our museum are things that Latin American dictatorships developed all over the region. So now we are at a stage of the candidacy to the UNESCO World Heritage List, where we already have the technical approval of the committee, and that happened in March of this year. And we are preparing to receive the inspections. We also are taking part and helping our ambassador in UNESCO in her work with sites in World Heritage, where, well, Mauricio Cohen-Salama will talk about that. As I was telling you, We also have for this candidacy with the unanimous support of all political sectors represented in our National Congress, the Buenos Aires City Legislature, and the Human Rights Council, and also many social networks, academic networks in the country, regionally, and in the world. The purpose of our institution, and we want to convey, I could tell you it is that the ESMA Memory Site Museum is a symbol and witness of something that we need to sustain and preserve for the citizenship, not only at national level, but regionally and worldwide. And to foster these feelings of truth and justice. The museum must fulfill educational missions, spread the word, and we not only need to talk about what happened at the site during the military dictatorship, but also the policies of truth, justice, and we also want to contribute to the danger of some speeches. Our site is part of the memory sites in Argentina that appeared from 1976 to 1983. And in this sense, so the debates in our site and other sites in the country is defined by the need of conserving them, generating consensus, widening or broadening the audience, social participation, and to link them to the tools that we need to continue preserving the memory and debates on heritage and human rights, but also to the sustainability of our institutions and working together with human rights organisms and with survivors and their families. So this is my presentation. I thank you for listening to me, and I give the floor. Thank you, Mikey. We will continue this discussion later, and there will be questions, I'm sure. I wanted to remind everybody who came in late to the webinar that and the lower right of your screen, there's a button that says interpretation, and you can choose the channel in which you want to listen to this in English or Spanish. Our next speaker is Eloy Colley. He is the conservation head of the House of Slaves at the Goree Island. He's also a consultant of the project for revitalization of the House of Slaves, managed by the Ford Foundation and the Senegalese state. He has worked with for more than 35 years for preserving the African cultural heritage. Eloy, please, you have the floor. Welcome.
So just to thank everyone and everybody. Very happy to participate to this event, and also very happy to share with the world about Goree Island. And also to say that the island of Goree is discovered by the Portuguese navigator Denis Diaz in 1444. But during a very long time, the island was between rivalries of European nations battling to control the harbor. They are Portuguese, Dutch, French, British, and French again. A very small island because of the dimension. 900 meters long for 3 meters large. And the high zone peaks at 36 meters in the south on 45,730 square meters surface, which represents 30% of the total surface. And the island is a municipality. We have a mayor and a council in the island. But also the island is inscribed Please, I'm back. And there is a national committee of safeguarding, includes representations of Ministry of Culture and Communication, DPC, Municipality of Gorée, associations of the island of Gorée, the Dakar Port Sea Link Dakar Gorée, and the local office of initiatives and tourism. There is a strong commitment and a connection to the site by local communities. The island of Gorée and the House of Slaves crystallize representation of slavery and cannot be disconnected from the bigger picture of need to address the economic impact of, because too many visitors. But what is important to say is that we have also a management plan. The management plan is ongoing, and we supposed to finish, and is supposed to finish last year, but we need to evaluate all the management plan. It is very important. And I would like to say that the communities are very important in the site. As a site of we use as a tool of management the Convention of UNESCO. It is something very important, and we suppose concerning Gorée Island, we are supposed to continue to the work in preserving the entire island, and also also to fight with the impact. I was talking about the visitors because of the we welcome specifically students of, because the slave trade is a part of in Senegal of our school curriculum, and it's represent, sometimes we welcome over or more than 1,500 kids in a same day. It's a very big problem. So now, how to combine the needs of the local communities and to address really the history concerning the protection and the preservation of the memory of the victims of, because I'm talking about slavery and the slave trade. It's a very big challenge that we have to face. So in addition, what is important to consider is the implication of the communities in the management of the island. Even we have 3 levels: the municipality, the Senegalese state, and the communities. But the communities are very important as stakeholders of, because with the protection of the island, we protect for the communities first, and for human being secondly. That is something, but it's also I have many difficulties to explain what I feel exactly of because of the limitation of my English, but I can understand and wait for the rest of the speakers to share knowledge and to know better what is possible to do in terms of protection of memories, and in order to refuse the repetition of the bad history. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, Eloy, por su contribución. Continuaremos
Thank
esta
you,
discusión.
Eloy, for your contribution. We'll continue this debate that you have started in the question and answer session. I will remind you that you can write down your questions in the chat, and we'll be, so we can send these questions to the panelists. We are going to finish with Mauricio Cohen Salama. Mauricio is the director of content and museographic production of the ESMA Memory Site Museum, former clandestine center of detention, torture, and extermination. He's an expert of organizational development. He was assigned to handle the whole process. Thank you very much for being here. I give you the floor. Thank you, Vinian. That guides all the participants and the people who are listening to us. As the side of memory and heritage is to talk about how is this situation of this kind regarding the UNESCO. The topic of the memory sites was very controversial for the UNESCO, because the list of the word list was not created for memory sites, was created for more conventional heritage sites. To say with simple words what we heritage supporters thought when is goods that express a culture. At memory sites, there is a completely different process. The places that were created with other purpose, and they became important because what happened there. So they link that memory in the say memory site. Sometimes it's traumatic with a human being. In the case of the ESMA memory site, this was created as a officers casino, and today is a memory site because it was a clandestine center of torture and extermination. And this not usual path to determine a it was always created some friction within the World Committee, and this generated a debate. At the beginning, the debate had to do the criteria 6, the criteria that of the places that have memory associated or linked that are important. The criteria 6 was the object of controversy. In some moment, the committee said is there's no heritage place can be presented only as criteria 6, and then they flexibilized this position, and preferentially they have to present criteria 6 associated to another criteria. So the place was not created as an expression of culture, but it's important because there, in that situation, in that place, something happened that was relevant. This always was controversial, but this controversy that has to be the concept of what is heritage. We added a larger topic that the traumatic memory of recent conflicts. And we started thinking the recent conflict with memory, traumatic memories didn't have to have a place in the list of the World Heritage. And there a debate started in the most important moment of this debate in 2018, a presentation of France and Belgium. The committee decides to suspend, to cancel this assessment of this submission, this presenter with the cemeteries of the First World War. We are going to call different stakeholders and group of experts to assess and make a decision if the memory sites have to be in what conditions they should be in the word list. So they convene different associations, the Memory Sites Association. There are groups of non-NGOs that advises or is a consultant of the UNESCO, and 2019 a group of experts that uh, does not recommend the memory sites has to do with um, recent conflicts and memories that divide society. They should not be in the word list. And there is an exception. Uh, for example, there's an exception for the slave trade because they don't consider this a recent conflict. It's from is 20th century onwards, and probably the slave trade was before that. This is something that is doesn't exist any longer, so it is not considered recent. So that was accepted, accepted in this list. In February of 2020, they give the memory sites should not be in the world is based on they generate divisions, gaps, there are interpretations that have not the maturity they need. And this is in the middle of the pandemic of 2020. There is no answer, no response to this. And the there in July of 2021 in China, there is a meeting. There is an opposition of many countries headed by the African countries. They had a meeting in April 2021 to be against of this recommendation of the experts not to include it in the word list. And in China, they have a protest of many countries. Argentina accompanies France, Belgium, Thailand, many countries are against, so they have an open work team to review, to revise these positions. This open work, it starts with different sessions, and casually yesterday we are part of the Argentine delegation of this work group, and we had the last there was a session yesterday, and tomorrow we have the last one. What I this is what I'm going to share with you. We haven't finished the sessions, but what is just about to be decided in this work group, we release the suspension for the memory sites. Memory sites should be, if they comply with the requirements of the word list of the UNESCO. It- the this is already discarded, is ruled out, and we accept that there are some problems on some memory sites that generate divisions between states or within the society. So what the last thing we are debating these days, tomorrow, yesterday and tomorrow, what mechanisms could exist so a state, if they have to, they're question this memory sites and they're opposed to that presentation, if they can have mechanism to cancel that suspension. So what we recognize as memory sites, there are places that they have a special treatment. What we are trying to agree on is what is the special treatment they should have, and we are in the last stages. Supposedly tomorrow we have the last meeting. We will get to a conclusion, an agreement among the countries that promote the memory sites and others that are a little bit reluctant, and most of them agree that they should be within the word list. This memory site should be in the word list of the UNESCO. And thank you so much for inviting me to participate. Thank you, Mauricio, for giving us this wider view or perspective. And we are going to transition this to the when we are going to start this debate, including the participants that they already sent several questions in the chat. And if there are more questions, you can write them down in the chat. And the first question is for Thomas, and it's about the memory sites of the Holocaust. And the question is, as a place of the Holocaust, how do you work with speeches of denial? How can we extend the evidence to from the physical to the virtual field? Can we change that?
Well, this is a very, very good question. Of course,
Esta es una pregunta.
might be probably even a topic on separate meeting and lecture. Well, first of all, we do experience the presence and acts of the denial of the Holocaust. I think in recent years, less than it was before, but it is still somehow happening. To be honest, nowadays most of these acts of the denial are rather vandalizing the place with the graffitis or with all kinds of inscriptions. We had a big issue in October last year when just the unknown people vandalized 9 barracks in former Birkenau camp with really terrible anti-Semitic graffitis. I think it is mostly because people know that, and they expect that if they will do something in Auschwitz, the press about that. And in fact, our policy in this case is that we do not really want the press to inform about that, because we know very well that this is one of the aims of these groups. They want somehow to be present in the media, And but we also have sometimes people who join, for example, a guided tours in a museum, and they ask all kinds of provocative questions. And then it is, of course, a big challenge for the guide. It's part of the training of the guides how to cope with such questions and challenges. But obviously, every situation is different. So it is really very difficult to cope with this. On the other hand, I think this kind of acts are still more present online than on site, which means that um, it's not that common that many deniers really come and visit Auschwitz Memorial. Or maybe in other ways, maybe there are more of them, but they just do not express themselves as a deniers, direct deniers.
Muchas gracias, Tomás.
Thank you, Thomas. The next question, whoever or any of the panelists can answer the questions. When there is a memory site that is declared of heritage by UNESCO, there exists that the other memory sites of the country or the same kind of atrocity could be devaluated, or regarding budget, visibility. Mikey, it's just a detail. Probably we both want to say something with Mauricio. In our case, to present, to submit the candidacy, in the first support and the first consensus was from the human rights that are part of the advising committee, and the consensus of the presentation of all the memory sites of our country. That is why I was telling you before that this candidacy represents, this is submitted also representing other memory sites. And how is a candidacy as an Argentine state, the commitment of the Argentine government and the preservation of this basis as a public policy, not only is addressed to the preservation of our ESMA site, but all the memory sites of memory of the country. Thank you, Mikey. In fact, I would like to go back about denial, because one of the webinars was dedicated exclusively to denial. I would like to invite Mikey and Mauricio if they can share this question as a ESMA memory site. How do you uh, deal with denial, with deniers? Really, in Argentina, we had a very long process of social consensus linked to crimes of the military dictatorship. There was a very important moment when the democracy came back to our country. Alfonsín had a commission, a national commission, and with a very complete report that drove to the trial of the military coup. And there was a body of evidence, of information, of reports that what had happened, and that created a very wide, very broad social consensus. And then there was our related to power, related to military forces, that would lay laws that they could limit the court action and some pardons. But that never had support, because there was a conscience and awareness in the society that made us to revert all this, to continue with the trial. We have more than 1,000 sentences towards the military dictatorship. So it's very, very minority, the possibility of having a denier a denial because we have unanimous support of the whole line of parliament members of all the different parties, and human rights when all governors of all the provinces are represented. Thanks to this social consensus, this denial is very, very limited. Something that is we have causes where the crimes have been proved with evidence. There's not only a speech, there were causes where the court already decided. So fortunately, denial in Argentina is something that is very restricted, very limited, and we are talking about a crime in the south, the forced disappearance of person, that is the common one in all South America, not only in Argentina. In the disappearance of people, the most important cause of the world related to forced disappearance took place here in Argentina and has many sections, many of different trials related to that. There is a lot of jurisprudence, and this helps a lot. And these small groups that try to deny, they have no space for that. We invite our participant to watch the webinar we had. We have a link to that webinar about denial. We continue with the next question that is for Eloy. The question is there any interest of the descendant of slaves in America with the East Isle of Gorée, a slave trade island? The art jammers, for example, visitors, the contribute of these descendants of slaves to improve the management of the island as a memory site?
Yes, yes, of course. That's why we are working now in a project so-called the project of revitalization of the House of Slaves that consists in the rehabilitation of the two buildings, the memorialization space properly, including the second building just in the front of the House of Slaves, that will be in a very near future, the International Center of Interpretation and Documentation on Slavery and the Slave Trade linked to the memorialization space. So we suppose also to build new exhibitions because the oldest one didn't take into consideration new implication and new forms, and also to organize, to re-evaluate the knowledge of the local guides. It is something very important that we have to do. Just to consider that slavery, the implication of slavery and the consequences in order to refuse the repetition of the history. So what it is important also for children that we welcome inside the House of Slaves is to give them tools to better understand what's happened and to consider that slavery and the slave trade is a part of the history of human being. And also considering the consequences is the consequence is some quite the deconstruction of Africans, because they definitely lost the self-esteem. It's very important for kids to regain the self-esteem. It is something very important, but also you know that the Fowle Foundation of the United States put a lot of money in this project. The Fowle Foundation put $1 million, but also the Senegalese state put $800,000. So it is something quite very important. And the purpose of the work is to put at the disposal of stakeholders, at the disposal of humanity, more informations about the consequences and to look what's happened between 16 and 19th included in the very beginning of, because we have also to address the Arab slave trade. So it's all the violations of human rights that you have to address by addressing what's happened during the 16th. I'm talking about slavery and the slave trade.
Muchas gracias, Eloy. Continuamos con la siguiente pregunta.
Thank you, Eloy. We continue with the next question. Taking into account the current situation at world level and the advances of the right in several countries, would it be possible to start an international action from these places, these sites, a massive and open action, open to the community? Would that be possible? Who would like to answer this question?
Tomás, ¿te gustaría?
Thomas, would you like to delve a little into this?
Estás en mute, tu micrófono, por favor.
Your microphone is muted.
Well, I think obviously
Creo que obviamente
we can try.
podemos intentarlo, pero por otro lado,
I'm not sure
no
if
estoy seguro si tal acción
somehow benefit.
beneficiaría algo.
You know, in the recent years I became
La razón por la
pessimistic
cual yo me
about similar
sentí
actions and,
pesimista hacia acciones similares, para ser honesto, es que
about
en algunos puntos, aún
taking such a big and global actions and
al tomar acciones grandes y globales, lo que es importante es trabajar en forma local.
this is the starting point of really
Este es el punto de...
So, you know, we can of course go globally and announce big actions, but then what is necessary is not only to start such action, but then also to continue, you know, to engage people and so on. And I think in the cases of our sites, it's easier and more fruitful to start it on a local level, and maybe then after build up and go more global.
Gracias, Tomás. Mikey, ¿te gustaría añadir algo?
Thank you, Thomas. Mikey, would you like to add something?
Mikey, ¿quisieras añadir algo? Veo que levantaste la mano.
Mikey,
No sé
would you like to add something? I see you raise your hand. I want to add regarding this question that we are responsible of these institutions. We have an international agenda defined, and in two cases, and it has acted in the World Heritage UNESCO World Heritage list and is to make people aware of what happened, at least in Argentina. So regarding international actions, maybe we are already involved in those because with the activity that requires a candidacy and be approved, we don't only define the file for the candidacy, but we do many presentations at regional level in Mercosur and also internationally with universities, social organizations, unions, with the diplomatic bodies. That gives visibility to the horrors that were committed. And it's an open action. It's open to the community as the question goes. So I think the best we can do in this sense and in the sense that the person asking the question poses is to comply in a very highly committed and professional way with the functions that our site museums have, and take this to an international level that will give visibility to the crimes committed. And in that sense, I think is the best way to fight the negation, negation speeches, at least from our point of view, from Argentina and our point of view. And in other cases, well, political parties, associations. Thank you. Next question is for Eloy and Thomas. How is the cooperation between World Heritage sites, and what makes you different from other World Heritage sites as to the support you receive from UNESCO? Who would like to start, Thomas or Eloy?
So what is
Eloy.
what is particular is that we are a World Heritage site. It's a one, but in the second hand, we also, I'm talking about the slave house. We are a member, a founding member of the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience. So that's what the two, we suppose to fight all violations. The inscription of the Goree Island is in 1966, 1706. No, in yes, in 1968. It's one of the first African sites as a World Heritage Site in the UNESCO. But UNESCO also help us in different ways in the implementations of many programs, local programs concerning Goree Island, but also because the implication of the municipality. So we're supposed to work together to protect and to maintain the island in the principles of the convention. That's something different. But I'm also, in addition, would like to, in addition, to talk about the implication of the local communities as stakeholders, because they have to appropriate. So to appropriate everything that we suppose to implement inside the management plan. It's something that we do inclusively. It's very important.
Gracias, Eloy. Tomás, ¿te gustaría responder a la pregunta?
Thank you, Eloy. Thomas, would you like to add something?
The second part of the question, which is what differs, what is the difference in terms of the support of the UNESCO? And I can only tell on like the local context. Well, I don't think there is a big difference between Auschwitz Memorial and other memorial sites, for example, in Poland or in Germany. In terms of the support, we of course we are in touch with the UNESCO, with the UN, but in case of our memorial site, it does not mean any bigger support. I mean, financial or whatever. So, and it is similar also in case of other memorial sites in Poland or in Germany. So I think the fact that we are recognized is of course important in terms of the fact that people want to learn more about the Holocaust, basically choose Auschwitz as a place to learn about that, not other memorial sites. But except for that, there is no big difference.
Gracias, Tomás. Nos quedan un par de
Thank you,
minutos.
Thomas. We still have a couple of minutes before we finish the webinar. So before we finish, I wanted to invite all panelists to give us any final reflections that you want to briefly share with us. If any of you, Thomas, Eloy, Mikey, Mauricio, want to share any final thoughts with us. Some closing words.
Just to say that we need to better stay in terms of memorialization is to work inclusively.
Gracias, Eloy. Tomás.
Thank you, Eloy. Thomas.
To say that I really appreciate the initiative of this webinar and of meeting the participants. We've met with some of you. We've met before, also online. But I'm really happy that in a way we're able to meet to build this network between our sites, and I'm really sure that this will benefit also in the future, even in terms of developing some future programs or any kind of cooperation. So maybe the UNESCO or the list is just some kind of a beginning of a future cooperation. And really thank you again for.
Gracias, Tomás, por esas palabras. Y ojalá
Thank you for your words, Thomas, and I hope this is the beginning of something. Mikey and Mauricio, would you like to add something?
Tomás, porque para nosotros es en el mismo
I
sentido.
feel the same as Thomas, because for us, this is important. First, to be talking to participants that we never see. So we thank you for the integration and the interest in these topics, but also talking with Thomas and Eloy, this is an opportunity for us to think together in a technical cooperation that might be feasible, because there are many debates that we need to address together. And also there are many initiatives, cooperation initiatives, or joint learning that we could materialize. So in that sense, we also see this as a great opportunity, and we want to thank you again for being with us. Thank you, Mikey. Mauricio, do you want to have some final words? All I want to say is that sometimes we think, well, we have some questions, how to end this type of violent situations once and for all. What action could we do to end this? And it's not possible. It's a constant work that must be completely and continuously renovated, and it is forever. And that is our job, is to continue in time, continuity in time. Thank you, Mauricio. And with this, I would like to thank all the panelists, Mikey, Mauricio, everybody for your time. Also the audience for your questions and contributions that have enriched this debate and discussion. And with this, I will say goodbye. I give the floor to Salome for final words. Thank you very much again. Well, thank you everybody for participating. This was a rich debate that allowed us to know a bit more about the current situation of other emblematic memory places. So I want to thank everyone for your virtual presence, and on behalf of the ESMA Museum and Memory Site. And of course, always invite our audience to visit the sites, to live the experience in person of what it means to walk through one of these memory sites and to get to know those traumatic memories up close so we will never repeat them again. Thank you, everybody.